Hello, everyone. I'm glad you're here. Please like and subscribe so I can tell more interesting stories. Now, let's get started. It happened on a Wednesday. At least I think it was a Wednesday. I'd marked the day on my calendar set, a phone reminder, and even bought myself a little cupcake from the grocery store the night before. But when I woke up that morning, the thought just didn't come. I went about my day like it was any other. Checked emails, folded laundry, forgot where I put my keys, found them in the fridge. Don't ask, and brewed coffee with a weird sense that something was missing. Only later that night, when a friend texted me a cheerful happy birthday, did my stomach drop. I'd forgotten my own birthday. Not a big milestone birthday, not a whirlwind of party plans and pressure, just a normal midweek celebration of being alive kind of day, and I completely spaced it. At first I laughed, sent back a ha ha ha, oh wow, thanks. Can't believe I forgot, like it was no big deal. But it was. It was a big deal, because this wasn't the first time my memory had slipped lately. I'd forgotten where I parked my car 2 days ago in a parking lot I use every week. I walked into the kitchen 4 times last week, only to forget what I was looking for. And I'd started relying on to-do lists, not as productivity hacks, but as survival strategies. What scared me most wasn't that I forgot my birthday. It was that I wasn't even surprised. The decline had been so gradual, so sneaky, I hadn't realized how often I was drawing mental blanks until I was literally forgetting myself. Historians still debate whether early philosophers like Aristotle truly believed memory was a function of the soul or simply a natural process of the brain. But either way, I was starting to feel like mine was underperforming and definitely undersold. So I did what any rational, slightly panicked adult would do. I Googled early memory loss signs. When to worry about forgetfulness. Is it normal to forget your birthday? And foods that boost brain function. Let's just say the internet was both helpful and mildly terrifying. Some articles assured me that midlife forgetfulness was normal. Others warned me that it could be a sign of something bigger. But what all of them agreed on, memory is not something you just have. It's something you maintain. And I hadn't been maintaining anything. If my brain were a garden, it was overgrown, underwatered, and probably being eaten by some metaphorical raccoons of bad habits and cheap snacks. That night, I sat with my uneaten birthday cupcake and thought about all the things I used to do without effort, remembering names, keeping track of conversations, multitasking like a wizard, and how those things now felt like puzzles I couldn't finish. I missed being sharp, quick, present. So I made a decision. No more waiting for things to get worse. No more shrugging off forgetfulness like it was just another side effect of adulthood. I was going to figure this out. My brain, my habits, my health. All of it. The next morning, I started a journal. Not one of those fancy bullet journals with perfect handwriting and washi tape. Just a spiral-bound notebook with the date written in large bold letters at the top because I needed the reminder. I titled the first page Operation Brain Fog, Day 1. Forgot to put on deodorant, again, but I remembered to write this. So, small win. I didn't have a plan yet, just a determination to stop ignoring the problem. I also started paying closer attention to what I was doing when I felt the fog roll in. The sluggishness, the blank stares mid-sentence, the feeling of being there, but not really there. It wasn't constant. Some days were better than others, but the pattern was clear. The more I ignored it, the worse it got. The scariest part wasn't forgetting my birthday. It was feeling like I was slowly forgetting myself. The version of me that could recall a conversation from 3 weeks ago, quote entire movie scenes, or remember every single password without needing a notebook. Okay, maybe not every password, but still, I missed that person. So I made a promise I'd try anything short of injecting turmeric directly into my veins. Because even if this wasn't some huge neurological problem, even if it was just a side effect of stress screens and sugar, I didn't want to live like this anymore. I wanted clarity, focus, and the comfort of remembering something as simple and as sacred as my own birthday. It didn't take long to realize that the fog in my head wasn't just random. It had patterns, triggers a personality, even kind of like a moody roommate who always shows up uninvited and overstays their welcome. And the worst part, I'd been living with this mental fog for so long, I'd almost forgotten what clarity felt like. Take Tuesday morning, for example. I opened my laptop to reply to an email. Just one email. And 40 minutes later, I found myself knee-deep in a YouTube rabbit hole about why octopuses are aliens. And let me tell you, if you've never seen an octopus squeeze through a coin-sized hole, your brain probably works better than mine did back then. But that's the thing. I wasn't trying to procrastinate. I was trying to think. My brain just kept skipping like an old CD, buffering on thoughts that should have been easy. Historians still debate whether memory and attention are governed by the same neural circuits, or if they operate in parallel, like two cousins who only talk during the holidays. Either way, mine weren't speaking at all. The truth hit me one afternoon, while I was sitting in my car, trying to remember where I was driving. The answer was the pharmacy. The reason I'd forgotten to pick up my own prescription twice in 1 week. This wasn't just about memory. It was about presence, about focus, about feeling like I was living 10 seconds behind everyone else. I started to fear conversations, not because I didn't want to talk to people, but because I couldn't keep up. I'd forget what someone said 5 minutes ago. I'd lose track of what I was trying to say mid-sentence. I'd get that glazed look in my eyes like a computer frozen on a loading screen. There's nothing quite like realizing you've become the person others politely nod at while they try to finish your thought for you. So I did what I do best. I panicked in a very organized way. I printed articles. I made lists. I highlighted words like neuroplasticity and executive function as if they were going to leap off the page and jog my memory back to life. And somewhere in the chaos of my brain declutter quest, I started noticing a strange connection food. I wasn't exactly a junk food addict, but let's just say vegetables. And I had a complicated relationship. My breakfasts were usually coffee and something vaguely crunchy from a box. Lunch, whatever was in arm's reach. Dinner, more often than not, a reward for surviving the day, which usually looked like pasta cheese and something deep fried if I was feeling fancy. You know how ancient Egyptians used to believe the heart was the seat of intelligence, not the brain. They even left the heart in during mummification, but scooped the brain out like it was useless jello. Looking at my diet, I started to think they might have been onto something. I certainly wasn't feeding my brain like it mattered. I began tracking everything I ate, not to judge myself, but to connect the dots. And guess what? On days I loaded up on sugar-white carbs or greasy takeout, the fog hit like a thick morning mist. On days when I somehow ended up eating real food stuff that didn't come in a crinkly bag or drive-through box, I felt clearer. Not perfect, but better. One night, after a particularly foggy day where I accidentally used dish soap instead of olive oil, don't ask, I Googled best foods for brain health. The results weren't surprising. Berries, leafy greens, nuts, fatty fish. You know, all the things that don't show up in vending machines. So I tried something radical. I swapped out my sugary granola for overnight oats with blueberries and walnuts. I started sneaking spinach into scrambled eggs. I bought salmon, even though I wasn't sure I remembered how to cook it. I drank water. So much water. The first few days were rough. My body craved the old habits like a toddler begging for candy. But slowly, the mental haze began to lift. One morning, I noticed something small, but magical. I remembered a neighbor's name before she said it. Not a big deal, right? Except I'd been dodging her for weeks because I couldn't recall if it was Barbara or Brenda. Small wins. The fog didn't disappear overnight, but it started fading like a bad dream. I felt moments of stillness between thoughts, stretches of time where I was fully there, not just existing, but aware. It felt like I'd been underwater for years and was finally coming up for air. I still had more changes to make, more habits to unlearn, but something was shifting. I wasn't just reacting to my forgetfulness anymore. I was reclaiming control. One meal, one moment, one memory at a time. The moment I realized my body wasn't the only thing that needed movement, but my brain too, everything changed. It all started with a walk. Not a brisk power walk with earbuds and calorie goals. No. This was more of a slow shuffle down my neighborhood block with coffee in hand and bed hair under a hoodie. The kind of walk you take when you're trying to remember why you came outside in the first place. But something strange happened that morning. I noticed colors, the red of a fire hydrant, the pink tips on a neighbor's rose bush, the soft rustle of trees I'd passed 1,000 times but never really seen. It wasn't dramatic. No glowing auras or symphonies of insight, just stillness. A moment where my thoughts didn't feel like spilled cereal on the floor. I wasn't lost in a fog. I was there, in my body, in the moment, and it made me wonder, what if the key to better brain health wasn't locked inside a pill bottle or hiding in a kale smoothie, but in something I'd been avoiding for years: movement? Historians still debate whether Hippocrates truly said walking is man's best medicine, or if that quote was a clever invention by fitness bloggers. But either way, I was starting to believe it, because when I started moving, even just a little, my brain started showing up again. I started walking every day, sometimes twice. No headphones, no podcasts, just me, my untangling thoughts, and the occasional awkward nod at joggers who pass by looking way more motivated than me. At first, I figured it was just the fresh air, or maybe the sun. But then I dug a little deeper into science not sidewalks and discovered something even more compelling: blood flow. Turns out, our brains are greedy little oxygen junkies. They demand about 20% of our body's total oxygen, despite being only 2% of our weight. So when I walked, when I got my heart pumping just enough to not hate it, I was basically giving my brain a power shower. One article I read, yes, I was back to Googling with slightly more clarity, now explained how regular physical activity increases the size of the hippocampus, the part of the brain linked to memory and learning. Apparently, that chunk of gray matter starts shrinking with age unless you do something to keep it strong. It's like a bicep curl for your neurons, so I kept walking, kept moving. I even joined a dance class, though. Calling what I did dancing is generous. Imagine a confused ostrich trying to learn Zumba. But I had fun, and afterward, my mind felt sharper, more connected. And then one day, while stretching after a walk, I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years: my grandmother's perfume. The name of it, the shape of the bottle, even the way it made her hugs smell like lilacs and soap. It hit me like a lightning bolt, this memory. Not just the content, but the emotion. I hadn't felt that depth of recall in what felt like forever. The body remembers. The brain remembers. But sometimes it needs a little circulation to unlock the vault. Of course not. Every day was perfect. Some mornings I woke up cranky. Some evenings I skipped my walk because Netflix had released something shiny. But even on off days, the difference was there. I didn't lose my train of thought mid-sentence. I didn't forget why I opened the fridge. And I definitely didn't mistake the cat's medicine for my own again. Don't worry, no one was harmed, just deeply confused. One weird off-topic fact I stumbled across during this journey. In 18th century France, aristocrats believed that tight corsets helped stimulate blood to the brain and improve female intellect. Historians still debate whether this was based on science or just a sneaky excuse to keep fashion painful. Either way, I was grateful I could walk freely, breathe deeply, and let my brain do its thing without being cinched like a Victorian teapot. My walks soon became more than just movement. They were rituals, resets, silent affirmations that I still had control over my mind, even on the foggy days. And the more I moved, the less I feared my own forgetfulness. Because each step felt like a reclaiming, a gentle reminder that my brain wasn't broken, just bored and badly treated. So, if you're wondering where to start, if you're afraid that your mind is fading, or that your thoughts are falling out the back of your head, like coins from a torn pocket, start walking. Start slow. Start sleepy. Start sore. But start. You might be surprised how quickly your brain decides to tag along. Sleep. And I have never had the healthiest relationship. We've flirted, fought, ghosted each other for weeks, and occasionally reconciled during long weekends with blackout curtains. But for most of my adult life, sleep was like that flaky friend who promises to show up but bails the minute you start getting attached. And if I'm being honest, I used to wear that sleep deprivation like a badge of honor. I only got 5 hours last night was my weird version of a humble brag, like my exhaustion proved I was productive, dedicated, or just really important, as if brain fog and memory lapses were the price of ambition. But after forgetting my birthday and a string of other increasingly embarrassing mental slip-ups, I started wondering, what if my lack of sleep wasn't just making me tired, but making me forgetful? Turns out, sleep is less of a luxury and more of a brain maintenance shift. It's when the cleanup crew comes in like little janitors with molecular brooms, clearing out the clutter, filing away memories, and scrubbing emotional residue off the walls. Historians still debate whether Leonardo da Vinci's famous polyphasic sleep schedule, where he supposedly napped in bursts instead of sleeping overnight, was genius or just another Renaissance rumor. But let me tell you, after trying to function on 5 hours for years, I was no Da Vinci. I was more like a disoriented raccoon with a coffee addiction. One night, after forgetting a neighbor's name for the third time in one conversation, I decided to make sleep my new obsession. I ditched my phone from the bedroom. I bought one of those weighted blankets that makes you feel like you're being hugged by a friendly bear. And I started treating sleep like the sacred ritual it is. At first, I was terrible at it. I'd lie awake mentally replaying every awkward conversation from 2006. My brain didn't know how to wind down. It was used to doom scrolling into the abyss. But slowly, with lavender oil, ambient rain sounds, and the stubborn determination of someone who'd once worn socks inside out for a week without noticing, I found a rhythm. 8 hours became my gold standard. 7 on bad nights. And when I consistently hit that mark, something wild happened. I started remembering things, like full conversations, like what I walked into the kitchen for, like the word sponge when I needed to clean the counter instead of calling it that soft sink brick. Sleep wasn't just giving me rest. It was giving me back me. One morning, after a particularly glorious night of deep sleep, I woke up and knew where I'd left my missing earbuds. They were in my coat pocket, the one I wore 2 weeks ago. I found them in 5 seconds. I nearly cried. It felt like my brain had finally come home. You want weird? Here's a fun fact. In medieval times, people had something called first sleep and second sleep. They'd sleep for a few hours, wake up in the middle of the night for a bit, pray, read, talk, even visit neighbors, then go back to sleep. Historians still debate whether this was biologically natural or just a result of no electricity and too many candles. Either way, the way we treat sleep today is far from how we used to value it. Modern life trains us to fight sleep, to push through, to treat rest like weakness. But when I started honoring my sleep, I realized it wasn't laziness, it was strategy. It was repair. It was permission to let my brain do its secret behind-the-scenes work. Now, I don't just guard my sleep like a dragon hoards treasure. I look forward to it. I want the dreams. I want the reset. I even invested in blackout curtains, a cheap noise machine, and a mattress that doesn't feel like sleeping on regret. And best of all, I started waking up remembering my dreams. Vivid, colorful, ridiculous dreams, like one where I was hosting a game show for penguins. Totally meaningless, maybe, but also a sign that my brain was finally firing on all cylinders. You don't need a fancy watch to track your REM cycles or a Himalayan salt lamp blessed by monks. You just need to care about sleep, enough to make space for it, enough to stop treating it like a backup plan. Because your brain, it remembers how you treat it. And the more I slept, the more I felt like my brain was saying thank you, with sharper thoughts, with clearer moments, with fewer fridge door stares, and more joy. So yeah, sleep. It's not just rest. It's a brain tune-up, a clarity reboot, a quiet celebration of your mind's resilience. And if that means missing one more late-night scroll session, trust me, your brain will throw a party in your honor. I used to think stress was just a part of adulthood, like taxes or that drawer in the kitchen where nobody knows what half the stuff is. Stress was constant, a low hum in the background of my life. I carried it in my shoulders, in my stomach, in that nagging voice in my head that always asked, "Did you forget something important again?" Turns out, stress and memory are like oil and water. They don't mix well unless you're trying to create the perfect storm inside your brain. It hit me hardest one afternoon when I forgot the code to my own garage. I stood there, like a confused raccoon, punching numbers into the keypad while holding 2 bags of melting groceries. I could remember my childhood best friend's phone number from 1995, but not the 4 digits I used every single day. I laughed, but it was that hollow kind of laugh, the kind that covers panic. So I did what any stressed-out adult trying to fix their life does. I Googled stress and memory loss. And let me tell you, the results were not reassuring. Apparently, chronic stress floods your brain with cortisol, a hormone that's great for escaping wild animals, but terrible for recalling where you left your keys. Too much of it, too often, and your hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for memory, starts to shrink. Shrink, as in literally get smaller. Historians still debate whether ancient Romans used stress as a training method for memory. Some sources suggest that orators would rehearse speeches while standing in cold water or under time pressure, believing the discomfort would burn the words into their minds. Personally, I think they just didn't have Twitter. Anyway, realizing my brain was essentially under siege from my own lifestyle was a wake-up call. I started experimenting with stress relief the same way someone might try different flavors at an ice cream shop. Yoga. Tried it. Felt weird pretending to be a triangle, but okay. Journaling messy. Handwriting surprisingly therapeutic. Deep breathing. I didn't realize how often I was holding my breath until I focused on not doing that. But the weirdest and most effective thing I tried, laughter. I began watching stand-up comedy every night, like it was my job. I laughed until I cried at jokes about nothing. I shared silly memes. I stopped taking myself so seriously. One evening, after a particularly stressful day, I burst into laughter while folding laundry because I found a sock I thought I'd lost forever. Not a funny situation, but the absurdity hit just right. And in that moment, I felt something loosen, like my brain sighed in relief. Scientists say that laughter triggers the release of endorphins and reduces stress hormones. But you don't need a lab coat to know that laughter makes life feel lighter. It makes your brain feel like it has room to stretch. It wasn't just about giggles, though. I made structural changes too. I started saying no more often. I stopped treating my to-do list like a sacred scroll. I even scheduled blank space into my calendar literal boxes labeled "Do Nothing." One offbeat fact I discovered in Japan: there are forest therapy programs where people walk through woods, slowly breathing deeply and touching trees. It's called Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing. Historians still debate whether this practice evolved from spiritual traditions or is a modern response to urban burnout. But either way, I tried it with a local park and a particularly nice oak tree. No robe or incense needed. As I added more stress reduction rituals to my routine, I noticed something radical. My thoughts felt smoother. My focus stopped skipping like a scratched CD. I could recall names, places, even passwords. Okay, not all passwords, but enough to impress myself. And that nagging voice, the one that always whispered, "You're forgetting something," got quieter. Now, I won't pretend stress is completely gone. Life still throws curveballs. Emails pile up. People forget to use their blinkers. But now, I don't absorb it the same way. I have tools. I have rituals. I have a sense of humor. And most importantly, I have clarity. Because when your mind is no longer under siege, when the fog of stress lifts, the light that comes through is beautiful. It's the light of memory, of presence, of knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, even if you still lose a sock now and then. There's a drawer in my house, one I used to open when I needed a pen, and instead found expired coupons, tangled headphones, and maybe a forgotten candy cane or two. That drawer is how my brain used to feel. Cluttered, confusing, randomly sticky. But little by little, as I made lifestyle changes and paid attention to my sleep, stress, movement, and diet, something started shifting. It was like finally cleaning that drawer, not all at once, but a little each day. And at the heart of that cleanup was something I now lovingly refer to as my memory toolbox. Let me back up. It started with a jigsaw puzzle, not a metaphorical one, a real cardboard 1,000-piece puzzle of a lighthouse. I found it during one of my don't look at screens for 3 hours nights. I hadn't done a puzzle since my childhood, back when my biggest concern was which crayon color tasted best. And let me tell you, it was addictive. The focus, the quiet, the slow assembling of chaos into coherence. It wasn't just meditative, it was memory magic. Turns out, doing puzzles activates both sides of your brain. You get spatial reasoning, short-term recall, visual memory, problem solving, the whole neural enchilada. Historians still debate whether Egyptian scholars played early versions of puzzles to stimulate intellectual thought or just to avoid cleaning the pyramids. But either way, I was hooked. After that, I started collecting habits like they were Pokemon cards from 1989, crossword puzzles, memory games, learning a new song on the ukulele, badly I might add, reading historical fiction out loud just to see if I could remember the character names later. One quirky fact I stumbled across: chewing gum while learning and again while recalling can improve memory. Scientists speculate it may have to do with increasing blood flow to the brain or providing sensory context. So yes, I became that person chewing mint gum while doing Sudoku. But it wasn't just games. I made my daily life a playground for my memory. I turned routines into rituals. I started cooking new recipes without looking at the instructions twice. I tried remembering my grocery list without writing it down, though I kept emergency notes in case my brain betrayed me. And the most powerful tool in my box storytelling, I started journaling, not just scribbles of emotion, but full-blown stories, recounting my day as if I were a character in a novel, giving myself plot arcs, dialogue, even dramatic cliffhangers like Will. She remember to take the chicken out of the freezer in time. Something about telling stories helped me encode the details better. There's science behind this. Our brains are wired to remember narratives more than disconnected facts. It's why you remember that time you fell into a bush at your cousin's wedding, but not where you left your sunglasses last week. And then came the most surprising tool of all conversation. Not the kind where you nod while scrolling on your phone, but real face-to-face, let's get coffee and tell each other weird stories conversations. Recalling names, places, anecdotes. Reactivating those memory circuits that had been snoozing under a pile of emojis and GIFs. Even talking to myself helped, not in a creepy way. Okay, maybe a little, but narrating my actions. Okay, keys, go on the hook phone, goes on the charger, helped my brain encode those actions as memorable. Historians still debate whether Socrates truly feared writing would erode human memory, preferring oral traditions and dialogue instead. Maybe he was onto something. Maybe all our tapping and typing has given our memory muscles an extended vacation. But I was waking mine up, gently, repeatedly, lovingly. It wasn't about perfection. I still misplaced my coffee mug 3 times in one morning. But I also remembered that my friend's cat's name was Mortimer. I remembered the lyrics to a song I hadn't heard in a decade. I remembered to take the chicken out of the freezer. Victory. And more importantly, I started remembering how good it felt to remember. That confidence, that the surge of "I got this" began replacing the anxiety I used to feel in everyday moments. My brain wasn't failing me. It was just out of practice. So now, every day, I reach into that memory toolbox. Not all the tools at once, just the ones I need. A puzzle here, a song there, a list, a walk, a story shared over coffee. Because memory isn't something you have, it's something you build. And me, I was finally under construction. I didn't notice it right away. These things sneak up on you like a shadow stretching longer as the day fades. But there it was, clarity. And with it came something even more surprising. Me. It started subtly, like waking from a nap where you don't remember falling asleep. I was standing in the middle of the kitchen again, but this time I actually knew why. To refill my water bottle, not to stare at the microwave like it owed me answers. A small moment, yes, but it felt enormous. That day, I sat down and made a list, not a grocery list or a to-do list, but a what I remember list. Things I had forgotten months ago that now came to me easily. My dentist appointment. The name of the barista who always adds extra foam. The fact that I'd already fed the dog who was now lobbying hard for second breakfast. Something had shifted, and the more I noticed it, the more it bloomed. I wasn't just remembering, I was engaged. I listened deeper in conversations because I wasn't so focused on scrambling to remember the last sentence. I laughed at jokes more often because I caught the setup and the punchline. I even started reading books again without having to reread the same paragraph 12 times. This wasn't some Hollywood-style brain reboot. I wasn't suddenly solving cryptic codes in foreign languages or winning trivia nights left and right. But I was present, and being present is its own kind of superpower. One day, I passed by an old coworker at the farmer's market, someone I hadn't seen in years. I remembered his name, his wife's name, even their dog's name. And I didn't just say hello. I started a conversation. It wasn't just memory that returned. It was courage. It was confidence. It was that beautiful, elusive thing called mental sharpness that had been sitting in the back seat for years. And the world looked different from there. Brighter, crisper. Like upgrading from dial-up to fiber optic in your own skull. Here's the quirky part. I started celebrating these little memory wins like a sports fan. Remembered the oven was still on victory lap. Recalled my online password without resetting it. Standing ovation. Matched a name to a face from a high school reunion photo, full marching band in my head. And I know what you're thinking. Isn't that a little dramatic? Yes. Yes, it is. But so is losing your memory and thinking you're just stuck with that fog forever. So when the fog clears even a sliver, you throw a parade. Even if it's just in your pajamas with confetti made of cereal crumbs. Historians still debate whether memory decline in aging is inevitable or if lifestyle choices can slow or even reverse the trend. Some studies show dramatic improvements from diet, exercise, and cognitive engagement, while others argue genetics hold the reins. But standing in my newly tidy mental space, I decided I didn't need a consensus. I needed my own truth. And my truth was this: I could change. Not overnight, not perfectly, but measurably, meaningfully. And if I could change this much, maybe I could help someone else believe they could too. Because we often think of memory loss as this inevitable slide. But what if it's not a slide? It's a staircase. And what if you can climb it one step at a time? A weird fact I discovered. Near the end of this journey, some ancient tribes believed memories weren't stored in your brain, but in your bones. They dance or move certain ways to awaken them. Is it true? Probably not. But I like the poetry of it, that your body remembers even when your mind needs a little help. Now, when I walk through my neighborhood, I see things differently. I remember which neighbor just repainted their door. I recall which path leads to the bench with the chipped corner where I had that amazing coffee once. I remember how good it feels to remember, and that maybe more than anything else is what I got back, me. So now, as I sit here with a cup of tea that I didn't microwave twice because I forgot about it, I want to leave you with this one truth. Your memory is not gone. It may be buried, fogged, a little shy even, but it's still yours. Still reachable. The brain is a wonder, yes, but also a friend. One that forgives your late nights, your skipped walks, your tendency to scroll instead of sleep. One that wants to heal if only you slow down and give it the chance. In the quietest hours, before the emails, before the headlines, before the noise, there's stillness. That stillness is where memory lives. In a scent, a song, a moment of laughter that echoes back something you thought was lost. This isn't a miracle tale. I didn't take a magic pill. I didn't wake up a genius. But I did wake up to myself. And in that awareness, I found power. The power to choose better food, to move more, to breathe deeper, to laugh, to rest, to reconnect, not just with others, but with my own mind. If you're in the fog right now, I want you to know it can lift. Maybe not all at once, maybe not forever, but enough. Enough to find your way back to names, to memories, to meaning. Enough to find your way back to you. Let your brain breathe. Let your thoughts stretch. Let your mind feel safe again. Because when you return to yourself, when clarity replaces chaos, everything, even the smallest moment, feels like a story worth remembering. Sleep well, breathe easy, and never forget you're still in there waiting to be remembered.